Hi, and welcome back to AMC Presents. My name is Jane, your AI-generated announcer. Today, AMC creator William Ford will be talking with American trumpet soloist Mary Elizabeth Bowden. Miss Bowden is a highly in-demand soloist, praised for her splendid, brilliant playing, Gramophone Magazine, and her pure, refined, and warm tone, American Record Guide. A gold medal, Global Music Award winner, Opus Klassik Nominee, and Yamaha Performing Artist, Bowden works diligently to establish a new repertoire for the trumpet through creative, collaborative commissioning projects and award-winning albums. Bowden has a recently released recording on Cedille Records with the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra. Made up entirely of trumpet concerti by living composers, the album includes works by Clarice Assad, Tyson and Vivian Fung, all commissioned by Bowden for this project, as well as previously composed concerti performed in newly commissioned arrangements by Reena Esmail, Kirkland Snider, and James Stephenson. Bowden earned her Bachelor of Music degree from the Curtis Institute of Music, where she studied with David Bilger, then principal trumpeter of the Philadelphia Orchestra. She earned her Master of Music degree in 2006 from the Yale School of Music, where she studied on a full scholarship with trumpeter Alan Dean. Bowden is currently assistant professor of trumpet at Shenandoah Conservatory. As usual, William conducts the interview in a way that we learn much about the artist, the music, and the music business. After you have enjoyed the interview, head on over the www.patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic to become a patron at any level. Also, it's very important to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It will help draw attention to the video, as well as help others to find this oasis of sanity in the ocean of internet sensationalism. Now let's turn it over to William and Mary Elizabeth Bowden.
Well, it's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Where are you located right now?
Well, for the summer, I am in Illinois, in the suburbs of Chicago with my family. But during the year, I live in Winchester, Virginia, where I teach at Shenandoah Conservatory.
What I'd like to do is to begin talking about your background, and that includes information like where were you born?
I was born in Illinois, in the suburbs of Chicago, and I started playing the cornet when I was 10 years old, and I was introduced to that because I have two older brothers who are 2 and 3 years older, and they were already playing brass instruments. My oldest brother played trombone, and then the brother who's a year younger than him played the horn. And so when it was my turn to pick an instrument, I really wanted to stay in the brass family so I could have the same teacher. We had the same teacher who would come to the house every Saturday. He played the horn, and that's how I started. I think that I just had a really strong work ethic from the beginning because before that, my weekly consistent activity from like age 3 till age 10 was dance, ballet, and tap. But I was not a good dancer. 2 left feet, very uncoordinated. So I had to work really hard to just make sure I wasn't going to mess up the shows. You know what I mean? So I just I just remember having the assumption that it wasn't going to be easy and I was going to have to work really hard to sound good on the cornet. And so right off the bat, I had a lot of patience and a really strong work ethic, and then much more natural than dance. So I think that just working really hard and not expecting things to happen right away was a bonus because that's how we live as musicians. We're always improving and growing no matter how much older we're getting. So I think that really helped me when I first started. And then from there, I just kept playing and was in different ensembles. As a teenager, I got into Chicago Youth Symphony, which was very motivating to play with other people who were great, and then continued on to the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia when I was 18, and then did my graduate studies at Yale.
Your two brothers played instruments. What about your parents?
No, they don't play anything. My mom was like, she like draws and paints for fun and was a graphic designer here and there. And my dad was an electrician. They're both retired now. They like music, but they also were not super familiar with classical music, but they were very open-minded to letting us try different activities. It was really through that very first teacher we had who introduced my whole family to orchestral music, and classical music. He would come to our house and pick us up and drive us into the city to go hear the Chicago Symphony. and concerts around the Chicagoland area. There's like a wealth of brass players. We just got really exposed to these great concerts at an early age, and my parents started going to some concerts too, and we just really fell in love with it.
Do they listen to music currently? Classical music?
Yes, they come to a lot of my concerts, my sister-in-law's concerts, and they really do enjoy it now. So it's very cool to see that.
Your sister-in-law is a musician?
She plays the flute, yes.
What did your peers think about your deciding to take up the cornet?
I had a couple of friends, all of us, we all joined the band program, and some people stayed for a few years, some people left. I ended up leaving school in 8th grade, went to community college instead of high school. But really, it was my brothers and I, we all went to community college instead of high school. So we got to go to school together, and we had a friend group there. And I had friends in youth orchestra who were doing the same thing as me. So I think everybody was just really supportive.
Why did you decide to go to the community college? What was the advantage for you?
The way that we saw it was that, in high school you spend like a whole year doing a subject, mini subject, where in community college, like a college, like any college, you get everything done in a semester and you get to choose your own schedule. There was a lot more flexibility in the scheduling, and then you could get I got my associate's degree when I was 16 and a half. And so it just seemed like more efficient. I didn't want to be in school all day, and it just seemed like a really good balance for what I wanted to do. And then I was able to work in a job also to help pay for things. Like I needed another trumpet. As a trumpet player, we have many trumpets. And then so before I went to the Curtis Institute of Music at like the normal age 18, I worked full time doing customer service for a furniture company. And then I would practice the trumpet too, and then play with Chicago Youth Symphony on the weekend. It was a really great life experience in those years for my education to like learn how to be an adult, learn how to manage things, and those skills transferred later on when I started becoming more entrepreneurial and starting my solo career, starting my brass quintet Seraph Brass from the ground up. All those skills of being able to navigate not just practicing your instrument, but learning other skills that help our musical careers as well.
After community college, you said you went to Curtis?
Yes, in Philadelphia.
You mentioned playing in the Chicago Youth Symphony. Those weren't occurring simultaneously.
No, Chicago Youth Symphony is a youth orchestra for people who are high school aged through age 18. I was there for 2 years, age 16 through 18, and then I moved to Philadelphia and started my freshman year of college at the Curtis Institute of Music, and then got my bachelor's in music performance, through the 4-year plan. The perk, some of my classes from community college transferred. Curtis doesn't count math and science credits, so those didn't transfer over like a normal college experience, but gen eds did like history classes and things like that. So mainly took music classes, and then we had a lot of course, rehearsals and performances.
And after Curtis?
Then I went to the Yale School of Music for my graduate degree in Connecticut.
How long were you there?
2 years.
Once you got all this education, which sounds great, how did you initiate your professional career?
During my last month at Yale, I won a position with the Richmond Symphony in Virginia. So I took an audition and got lucky and won a smaller job there, and still had a little position in Philadelphia, Symphony and C. So I was very much an orchestral player in my 20s. A few years into that job and navigating my life, I really wanted to do something different, and that's when I branched out and started pursuing solo concerts and trying to build a solo career, which takes a lot of time and energy. So in my late 20s, I started taking lessons with soloists around the world and kind of checking things out, and really starting to think of like, if I want to do this, how can I make this career happen, and shift from a full-time orchestral player to being soloist and chamber musician more. I still love to play in orchestra. I'm glad that I have that skill, but my career is much more heavily now performing concertos with orchestras or touring with my brass quintet.
I know you're still involved with orchestras, and I don't want to put you in the position of critiquing the orchestral experience, but what sticks out in your mind about it? In other words, you found that an individual solo career might be more satisfying to you, but then that would also say something about your experience with the symphony orchestra. Can you encapsulate that?
Definitely. I think for me, I love traveling and I like variety. With the solo career and the chamber music career, I get to see the world and get to take trips. This next season, Seraph Brass is going to Peru, Jeju Island in Korea. So there's, I couldn't do that with the orchestral job that I had. It really depends on the composer, but if, sometimes when I come and play guest principal trumpet somewhere, depending on the composer, you have to play with a very different approach, playing with sometimes with a very big full sound from the back of the orchestra, which I find very empowering. And like in an orchestra, you have the music director often is shaping the scope of the musical vision for the piece. And so, you have your artistic voice, of course, but you ultimately have a leader who is telling you how they would like things to go. And what I love about chamber music is that there's five of us in the group, and when we're rehearsing, we're collaborating on decisions. So there's not just like a top-down approach, it's a team approach. And as a soloist, I'm making my decisions on how I would like the music to go. I like doing all of those three things. They're just all different. And for me, I like variety, so I like having them all in my life because it keeps me versatile in my playing, makes me a better teacher where I teach at my conservatory to be well-rounded. And I'm a nomad at heart, and so just the traveling is like some people love the stability of just the daily routine being the same town, same place, but I like jumping around and having adventures.
Do you have trumpeting heroes? Someone that you look up to, someone who you admire?
Yeah, there's some people for sure. My favorite since I was like 11 years old is Sergei Nikaryakov. I've been listening to his album since I was a kid, and now I've gotten to work with him at some festivals, which is really cool. And he's just a very inspiring, really kind person. I mean, there's like a lot of great trumpet players who I really admire. There's Barbara Butler, who I took some lessons with here and there when I was younger, and she's a phenomenal teacher and role model.
There aren't that many people who actually have solo careers playing the trumpet. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. And when you look at the top soloists in the world, trumpet soloists, you'll see that most of them have a variety of things in their career. Like, I think it maybe is pretty rare for someone to just make a living playing trumpet concertos. There's usually some kind of side thing. Usually teaching seems to be good because you have a home base. If you love teaching and you're a good teacher, that kind of pairs really well with the career of a solo artist. Health insurance is good, at least being an American musician. And you'll see that they do a lot of chamber music and projects with other musicians. And so, yeah, when I look at soloists, other soloists who are working in the market right now, a lot of them, you'll see them that they don't just play. It's rare that someone, I don't know if anyone just plays solos. One of my other favorites that comes to mind is Håkan Hardenberger, incredible trumpet soloist, always commissioning new works for the trumpet. And now he's doing a lot of conducting. And so you'll see people branch off and do other things too to kind of fill up the career.
Since you're still fairly early on in a career, in your own thinking about that, what would be the ideal for you, or if that's something different than what you have already?
I'm trying to branch out into other countries. I've traveled to brass festivals and things like that, but my dream is to be playing concertos with orchestras more internationally, touring Europe, just kind of getting out. Right now, that I've done a lot in the United States as a concerto soloist, and so my hope is to start branching out to other countries.
Is there a large body of works like trumpet concerti, for example?
There are. I mean, I think that see that a lot of the favorites tend to pop up a lot. You have the famous Haydn and Hummel classical concertos, and then you'll see the Artunian and maybe Tomasi. But there's so much more beyond that this does not get programmed because people like to stick with what they're familiar with. And so I think what I'm starting to see in the trumpet world right now is that the trumpet's becoming more of a popular solo instrument, and there's been a lot of commissions happening. Like right now, Wynton Marsalis wrote a trumpet concerto, and so I think there's like 5 trumpet soloists worldwide that have been performing it all across the globe. And so hopefully that will become a standard trumpet concerto. I'm commissioning new pieces that you can hear on my album, and hopefully more people will play them, not just me. And so I think we're starting to change the scenery because there's these soloists, they're commissioning new pieces. Patro Flores is one of my other favorite soloists, and he's constantly bringing new trumpet concertos to life. And I've heard he's performing like in the United States a lot now too with a lot of orchestras. And so I'm starting to see that change, which is very exciting for our instrument.
What happens when you travel and you need to practice?
So I'm pretty creative with that. Right now I'm pretty comfortable practicing with my practice mute. I used to not be comfortable with that, but I just got used to it and now it's not a problem. So it's like very soft. You just put the mute in the bell if you're in a hotel. And sometimes I don't use the mute. If it's like, you can kind of like, if it's midday in the hotel, I find that if I blast the TV in practice. Nobody complains. I know that's very strange. People seem to be okay if they think the trumpet's on television, but the minute you turn the TV off and play, then someone complains. So I've learned those tricks. Sometimes I'll practice in a conference room or by the pool. At an airport, if it's not cold, I'll practice outside. In the airport, sometimes I find a little corner and practice because I have the practice mute. So it's not a problem for me anymore.
Have you had people complain?
Sometimes if I have the TV off and I have no mute, people will complain. You blast the TV, nobody ever says anything.
You have traveled and played all over the US, and you've played certainly plenty internationally. Is there something that sticks out in your mind about differences in classical music audiences around the world?
I think, if anything, I see that's what draws everybody together is that I cannot speak the language. If I'm somewhere, I don't speak the language, but the music brings people together. And like, I know that's cheesy to say, but that's why we do what we do, is to just share what we've been practicing, tell a story, and hope that people get some enjoyment out of their day from hearing what we're doing on stage, and not take ourselves too seriously and just try to have fun and share with audiences. And I just feel like that's really inspiring to just meet people all across the world who enjoy hearing what we do.
Hey, Jane here. Sorry to interrupt. We need your help. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Head on over to patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic to become a patron. Now back to William and Mary Elizabeth Bowden.
By the way, do you listen to music yourself?
I do. I listen to pretty much anything. Playlist is often rotating. When I go running, I listen to a lot of pop music. I do listen to some classical, but I think for me, classical music is not good background music for me. Like I need to be listening intently, if that makes sense. Like I never put it on as background. So it just kind of depends on the mood and what I'm doing. Yeah, I kind of go through phases. Like sometimes I'll go running and I'm listening to like Mitsuko Uchida playing all of the Mozart sonatas, or I might be listening to something completely different, maybe some David Bowie or some of the pop tunes that are popular now, and just having a wild mix. My playlist is like kind of all over the place.
How do you get booking? Do you have a booking agent who takes that for you?
I do now, but when I first started out, you don't just like decide I'm going to be a soloist and you get a manager and everything's easy. Even with a manager, it's not easy. I mean, I'm an American and I play the trumpet. It's difficult, we're not I don't play violin or piano. And so trumpeters we do have to work a little extra hard to get the bookings and stay relevant and be noticed. So when I first started out, I was on my own, and then as I got traction on my own, then I got my first manager. Now I just signed with a new manager, Dan Visconti at Visconti Arts, and we're planning the 25-26 season right now with a new commission by Jeff Scott, who's writing my next trumpet concerto. So it's really nice to have that help now that I'm established. It's really necessary to have someone speaking on my behalf. But that doesn't mean I just sit back and just practice. I still have to, contact people and put him in touch with people, keep up my social media presence, making videos and content that the audience can watch. I mean, we live in a very different world than 20 years ago. So that's something that I think if I wasn't a musician, I probably would not have social media, but I understand that I need to use it as a tool to to communicate with the audience, stay relevant. And in Seraph Brass, we have a manager too, who we've worked with for about 8 years. And so he's doing a lot of that, the contracting and contacting for us, because I used to carry a lot of the weight myself with the brass quintet and myself, and it's just too many admin hours, and it's not possible for one person to like do all of that. So I feel grateful that I've been able to offload some of that, because there's just always endless administrative tasks with running a brass quintet and in my solo career on top of that. So I can't just ever just maybe there's a top 5% of soloists that can just sit back and practice and let people take care of them, but I think everybody else they're doing a lot of work on the back end of things.
Do you know if your booking agent calls up Taiwan and says something like, gee, I got this great trumpet soloist. Would you be interested for next season? Is that how that works?
Sometimes we do cold call, reaching out, but I think it always works better if you know somebody in the organization or have some kind of personal connection, or if you're going to be on tour in the area. So we always keep that in mind when contacting, because it is kind of rare. I mean, cold calls do work sometimes. It's usually better if you can find like some common ground with any organization that you're trying to contact.
You have a new album coming out, and it's on Cedille Records?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Talk a bit about what you're presenting in that recording.
So this is an album that showcases new commissions and arrangements. So everything on the album is new. The arrangements are there's two by Jim Stephenson, who is a friend of mine, of pieces that he had written before that are like new arrangements. And the rest of the pieces are new commissions. So there's a new trumpet concerto by Vivian Fung, Clarice Assad, Tyson Davis, and then there's arrangements of pieces reworked by Sarah Kirkland Snider. I love to play her vocal pieces on the trumpet, and also Reena Esmail reimagined a piece that she had originally written for a different instrumentation and made it for trumpet and full orchestra, which is really beautiful. So it's again, it's not background music for sure. My last album was like all fun arrangements of classical favorites, which could be background music, I guess, something. And but this one I think is very much like, I think listeners will enjoy it listening to it rather than trying to write emails while listening to it, if that makes sense.
So some of these pieces or all of the pieces did you commission yourself?
I commissioned everything. The arrangements I commissioned. Like I asked the composer to make an arrangement of a pre-existing work that they had. So the first work that I commissioned was the concerto by Vivian Fung. I love her music, and I was at the time talking with the executive director of the Erie Philharmonic in Pennsylvania. And again, connections. I recognized that the executive director was like an old friend from Philadelphia from 20 years ago. And I wrote him and was like, how's it going? Do you think that you would be interested in hiring me as a trumpet soloist? I kind of just wrote it on a whim, thinking like, they're not going to hire me. And he wrote back, of course I remember you. We'd love to have you. What do you want to play? And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And I just on a whim was like, could we do a commission? Could we have a new piece written? And he's like, let's do it. So he taught me how to do the whole consortium process, where essentially we got 8 orchestras to join the consortium, and Erie Philharmonic was like the lead commissioner. We got 9 orchestras to join, and so those orchestras fund the composer, the composition, and then I get to play the concerto 9 times. And so rather than just having one organization foot the bill and you get one performance, now we get 9, and so more people around the world can hear this new piece, which I think is a really great way to get the music out there. And if you have a group of orchestras supporting the composer. So I did that with the Assad concerto as well. We got 12 orchestras for that one. And then I was in touch with Jim Ginsburg at Cedille when we were planning the album, working with like the list of composers and deciding, like, they introduced me to Clarice Assad when I was deciding on like the last piece to add, and she was able to fit it in her schedule to write her trumpet concerto. So it's a long process, but it's worth it. And I think the consortium process is really great because the music is just heard a lot more.
Over what period of time, from your first contact with the Erie Philharmonic to the actual finished recording, how long was that?
So I first contacted Vivian in 2018, I think late 2018, something like that. And the premiere of the Fung was in March of 2020, right before lockdown. And I had not contacted Cedille Records yet. I was planning on recording Vivian's concerto, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. Like, I did my first 2 albums on my own and released them through Summit Records, but I knew I wanted to record with full symphony, but I wasn't sure how to do that myself. Vivian introduced me to Cedille and was like, you should apply, send in an application. And so I sent in my application with my ideas and the idea to collaborate with Chicago Youth Symphony, and they accepted my project, and that's how that relationship was formed. And of course, this is during, I applied in 2020 or 2021, I can't remember actually now. And so COVID put a halt on everything, as we know, for like a couple of years. And so then after that, we were able to start recording the pieces. We had a couple of delays, but now it's just so exciting to see that it's finally out into the world.
How long were the recording sessions for the CD?
We had many days when we did it in chunks. We didn't just do it all in one week. Like we recorded Vivian's concerto in fall of 2021. And so we performed it, And then we had a day of recording. It was like a full day, 6 hours, I think. And then we got delayed for the rest of the album, and we ended up recording. We did a chunk this last December. We did a few days in December, and then we did a couple of days in January to wrap up all the pieces. It was, I can't remember how many days, maybe 6 days total, but kind of spread out over that timeline.
Well, given that it's a youth symphony, were there particular challenges of doing a recording with that group?
Well, I found that they were very enthusiastic and just up for anything. And the conductor, Alan Tinkham, is such a great leader, and he has so much enthusiasm. He kept the students energized, and I feel like there's something about like young musicians and the amount of energy that they emit. Like it's very inspiring, and it's just a good reminder. Like they just love to play. So I was like worried, oh, are they going to complain if the session's like we're getting later in the day? Are they going to get tired? No, they're totally fine, and they're just really inspired. And so I thought it was a very smooth process.
Were there any technical challenges for the youth symphony in playing this new music?
I didn't really see any. In a recording session, that's great because you're not just playing through and that's it. You get to do things in chunks and really refine things. You have the engineer and producers in the booth, and they ask for things. They're very specific about the changes that they need. And then Alan is a great leader, and he rehearses the group a few times, and then we play it again, and then it's in the can, so to speak. I really enjoy recording. I think it's a definitely different art form than performance, because you really just get to refine things in a very different way than a live performance is. Obviously not about that, but we can do chunks and really refine and be like, oh, maybe we should lead to the phrase more here, or let's add more vibrato on this note. Like you can really just fine tune all the nuance in any way that you want.
Were you involved in the post-production process also?
Only in the sense that once they had the first takes of stuff, like for everything put together, they would send it to me and the composers, and we would send back feedback. Do you have a better take of bar 10 here? Do you have a better take of this? Or this isn't together here. And then he would go back in his notes and see if he could find takes that I would like better. There wasn't a ton of that, but there was a few changes after the first edits were sent to all of us.
You have a really busy schedule coming up this year.
Yeah, and I kind of just finished that this year. The 23-24 season was pretty much like 2 seasons crammed into one. It was really, really crazy. I enjoyed it. Next season's a bit lighter for me because I need some time to practice the new concerto by Jeff Scott. And but there's still some exciting trips. So it's a little bit, as musicians, we just learn. Oh, I need some rest time now to practice some new material, and just to also catch up on sleep and kind of start dreaming of the next projects. Because if I'm always on the go, there's no time to explore new ideas, if that makes sense. So this season was crazy. Now I'm like resting in Illinois. Next season's a little bit lighter, and so that just gives me more. And then I have a feeling the 25-26 season is going to be a little crazy again, so we'll see.
Do you have any private students?
No, because at my studio at Shenandoah, I have 15, so that's a lot. Sometimes I have as many as 17. So I do teach lessons outside. Like if someone's like a prospective student, or if someone just wants like a one-off lesson, I'll do that. But I typically don't take extra students, just because I don't have the time to give them each week with my current course load. By the way, I say we're getting cut off in less than a minute, so would I sign on to the same link?
You're right. Oh my goodness, yes. I didn't even see that. Sorry, thanks. I really got lost in it, so it was great. It was great. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Jane again. That was another great interview, marred only by William not paying attention to the time. Even the great has flaws. We need to thank the following people and organizations for helping with their interview. First, a great big thanks to present and former Patreon supporters, Robert Burns, Andres Cardenas, Deborah Kay, and Jim Ginsberg. Their financial support of the channel is greatly appreciated. We also want to thank Schumann PR for their support of AMC Presents. Their help has been invaluable in producing these videos. As always, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is a small thing for you, but a major thing for us. It helps us to garner more attention from that algorithm. Finally, remember to go to www.patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic to become a patron at any level. Simply giving up a small latte a month and joining at Patreon seems like a fair trade to us. If you have comments or would like to suggest others to be interviewed, let us know in the comments below. We look forward to seeing you next time at AMC Presents.